everyone, it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to my submission for the Back to Basics card hop. So today you're going to see techniques that I haven't done in a while, but they're some of the very first ones that I ever learned. So hop along with us. I'll talk a little bit about the hop as we go along and explain to you the techniques that we're going to do as we go through this video. Here are the two cards that I made, and I just realized that I forgot a step in the one on the left. So I'll talk you through that while I'm working on this. One of the first techniques that I learned was ink blending, specifically with distress inks. I love this technique. There are so many things you can do with distress inks as opposed to distress oxides. The inks came first and they are a different formula than the oxides. I forgot how much more difficult they are to blend together, and you'll notice as we go through. I even went old school and used the mini ink blending foams. Now, if I had these square ones that were the first ones that came out, I probably would have used those to be true old school, but I don't have any of them, but I do have a lot of the mini ink blending tools. So I inked up 3 different foams. I used spun sugar, that's the first layer that I put down. Tattered rose is the layer I'm working on, and then you'll see worn lipstick is the third. Now you'll notice that I got a lot of the foam marks on my paper. These are not easy to use, definitely not as easy as the blending brushes, and I realize how spoiled I am with the blending brushes because they're so easy to use and they don't put the marks on the paper. But you'll notice a 4th ink to the very right, the picked raspberry. So there was a technique that I wanted to do. I had actually done this background once before, but there's part of this that I did and it got messed up, and I'll talk you through that once I get to that point. But I forgot to do part of the technique and I just realized it. So the distress ink in picked raspberry, there is a step after we do the embossing that I'll talk you through once I do the embossing. So there you go. You can see that I got the mark from the blending brush on there. So I'm going to put the 3 colors down, and then I'm going to use one of the lighter colors, the spun sugar, to kind of go over everything to try to make everything blend together nicely. It blends together okay, not really in love with it, which is why I did the shimmer spray on the original card, which you'll see in a little bit, which was my inspiration. I found an old card. I went back through my cards and found something that I knew that I did a really long time ago and looked at the techniques and thought these are great to showcase. So again, now I'm just taking that spun sugar and just trying to drag it across the screen or across the paper to try to get all of those colors to blend together. I don't know if maybe they're a little bit too far apart. The 2 are too close and maybe the last one is too far apart. But it wasn't the best ink blending that I've ever gotten. I think I got spoiled by distress oxides. So anyway, there's the Cuttlebug embossing folder, the happy birthday that I ran through my Cuttlebug. And now I am going to be doing a shimmer spray. You can see there's the original. And on that original, I actually, before I did this shimmer spray, I took that 4th color and just inked it very lightly over top so that some of that embossed images would pop from the paper. Now, in the original, I took the Perfect Pearls Mist in Perfect Pearl. However, that wasn't working right, so I used the Perfect Pearls Mist in Heirloom Gold, and you'll see that there's a bunch of dots on there, and it didn't work out really the way that I wanted it to, so I took a paper towel to try to sop up some of that. And don't worry about the dots at the bottom. We will fix those in a little bit. So I will show you my mistakes. And as always, tips and tricks on how to fix them, because whatever card I have in my head is never the card that comes out when you see it on screen. So now I'm taking this Simon Says stamp die, which is like a Polaroid, and it just says birthday. I originally had the word happy, the one that you see off to the right hand side on the white part of my mat. I had that and I cut it out of black, but it was too thick of a cardstock, and I think my Cuttlebug is failing on me and it didn't cut all the way through. So I just decided to go with this birthday piece because it said happy, so I framed it in there. So that says happy and then this says birthday. So it's on there. Now I'm taking my MFT On Point Precision Glue and just putting it behind all of the letters on the Polaroid. Now you've probably seen this in other videos. I've actually cut off the birthday and used just the Polaroid frame. I used it in one of my Christmas video series this year, which is a great way to extend your supplies, which I will be doing some videos on ways to stretch your supplies. So anyway, I just put that down, and the gold Perfect Pearls was not exactly dry, and I do get some of it on the bottom, but I wipe it off and you can't really tell. And I like the pop of black on top of it. I like to have some sort of black to ground the card, and then I just matted it on a black cardstock. So the inked piece of paper is 4 1/4 by 5, or sorry, 4 by 5 1/4. And then the card base is an A2, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that's it for that card. And now we are going to move on to the second card. So I used Shaded Lilac, and these are both Distress inks again. I'm going to ink up the entire background in Shaded Lilac. Now you could do this in multiple colors. I just decided for the sake of time that I was just going to do 2. And again, I'm using some makeup brushes, but I believe because I use some Distress Oxide with these brushes and I don't use my inks as often, I think that there must be something that gets on the brushes and it wasn't going over the paper very smoothly. I noticed it earlier when I was trying to blend something else. So I kind of like the texture that it got, but you really won't see this in the end. It doesn't matter how well you cover the paper, you just want to get a layer of color down. And we're going to use that same exact embossing folder to do this one as well. So after I cover the entire thing as best as I can, there's white on there, that's perfectly fine, it does not matter. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the embossing folder. So I was trying to figure out which side I wanted to put the ink on, because we're going to be doing an inking technique where we put ink on the embossing folder. Don't worry, doesn't hurt it any at all. Wipes right off, not a big deal. So I'm going to put it on the top, and I'm going to run it all over. I'm going to place my paper in and then be super careful not to shift any of this. Put it into my embossing machine and emboss the entire thing. Now, if you did the other side of it, if you inked the back, the raised images would actually be the darker color. Instead, the raised images are the lighter color, and it pressed down into the paper, the darker color. So there it is. The bottom shifted a little bit, but again, don't worry. I'll show you guys how to cover this up. So I cleaned off the embossing folder, and now we're going to get ready to do the next part. So I cut a piece of black cardstock, and then I cut a piece of smaller cardstock in white. We're going to ink it up with that Shaded Lilac Distress ink, and then we're going to stamp on it. And I was super brave. I stamped on it using a stamping block, using Distress ink to stamp. Distress ink is not great for stamping. Usually if I use it, I will use my stamping platform, but I wanted to go old school again, back to the basic techniques, using the block. Now this is from a wooden block. I peeled it off, and I'm just putting some removable adhesive on it just to temporarily hold it onto that block. And I'm going to ink it up with the darker ink, which is Wilted Violet. Going to press it down onto my paper and hope and pray that it stamps. And miraculously, this is like the one thing that went right tonight for me. It stamps really, really well, and it gives a solid image. So, and it's pretty straight, not exactly straight, but we're gonna use the ATG to put it onto that black piece of cardstock. I'm sorry, I put this, because it wasn't dry yet, I put the tape on the black piece and then just put that over top of it. And now I'm going to take that front piece, the panel that we made, and I'm just going to hide the most, I guess, offensive, or the parts that look the worst. I'm gonna put the ATG on the back of it, hide those pieces, and it's not you're not really gonna notice. If you look at it, you can't really tell that that piece kind of shifted at the bottom. So putting ATG on the back of my card. And that was it. That's the cards for the day. So I hope that these techniques remind you that, or of techniques that you guys may have learned at one point and just forgot about. I really racked my brain to try to find some good ones that were very, very basic. Hope you enjoyed this. Enjoy the hop. The next person is linked below in the more information section, and I'll see you guys again real soon for another video.